Looks like I have 1 minute for each month that we've been working on this process. This will be my last time coming to this chamber to remind you of people's right to direct democracy in our city. This body has completely abandoned your responsibility and your civic duty to our people. Many of you have put your political aspirations ahead of your civic responsibility. And today, the reason I'm emotional, y'all have seen me talk in front of places for 10 years. I'm emotional because I walked into this chamber and watched in the home of Lewis and King, I watched in the Year of the Youth, young folks get handcuffed, marched out for everybody to watch, and told that they were going to be arrested for peacefully protesting in our city, in our Atlanta. I'm so sad. That's heartbreaking. This body has no problem finding the words of King when it is politically expedient. But you also have no problem finding the same tactics that assassinated him in the first place. And you use those tactics against us. And I am here not because I believe that me appealing to you will actually do anything anymore. I want to make sure that the record remains straight when we talk about this in the future, that there will be no revisionist history of how we got here. Almost 20 years ago, we promised a black community a public park, a park that was turned into a prison. We said we will reimagine that for that community. And then on the heels of the murder of George Floyd and COVID-19, while organizers were raising money for funerals and for basic human rights for folks, corporations and donors were raising money to build one of the largest police training facilities that this country has ever seen. And they said that we will only build it on one place, and that is on the same land that we promised that black neighborhood would be a public park. And this body obliged. Somehow, you were able to sign this agreement when your hands were apparently tied behind your back. And so many of you, Councilmember Bakhtiari, Lewis, Waits, Dozier, you have been speaking up that you want to make this right. And this body has continued to break its word and to break our hearts. And you said you wouldn't make the park smaller for that community. You did. You said the price of the facility wouldn't go up. It did. You said you would be respectful of dissent, and you were not. And thankfully, and luckily, in Maynard's Atlanta, the city charter gives the people the right to direct democracy through referendum. It is our right, and your only power in that right is to codify a process. And so I'm clear, the city of Atlanta actually allows for referenda, but doesn't have a process on how to do it. And instead of creating one, you are making people beg you for a process. You said you would do it at the beginning of the process, and you didn't. You said the clerk would do it, and they didn't. You hired another clerk to be the special clerk on this issue, and they didn't do it. And so the people finally said, we'll create a process, and unlike you, we did it. In your obsession about Atlanta being a group project, You refuse to pull your weight and put the burden of on the people to do your share of the project. But the people continue to show up because that's the real Atlanta way. Then at the hottest summer on record, 100,000 people signed a petition demanding a public vote. And when those petitions were handed over to you, you still didn't have a public process. So what we did was we worked with local and national organizations, said, what are the best practices around the country that this place that is obsessed with democratic politics will surely want to look at national best practices to codify that locally. And we presented it to you publicly and privately. And every step of the way, you stood in the way. You said one thing in one room, and then you said one in another. You cried to us in one room, and then you laughed at us in another. Every time we ask you for progress, you tell us you are powerless. But when it comes to progressing harm, you somehow find calculated courage. This is not about protecting police officers. This is not about protecting a park. This is about you protecting power. And our ask was simple. We just wanted you to protect democracy. That we want a process that counts petitions fairly, that don't use signature matching. It's a harmful process. I sat with you. We walked through every line of that. And we call on you to not use police officers as a political bargaining tool between you and the people. This is about democracy, and we want you to be on the right side of history. We do. This is hurtful. I have no pride, no happiness, no joy in being here. I have plenty of disagreements with some of y'all, personally, professionally, but we should agree on this. That when over 100,000 people are on one side of history, which include Dr. Bernice King, Ms. Helen Butler, LaTosha Brown, Mary Hooks, Reverend Warnock, Stacey Abrams, and you find yourself on the other side, you might be on the wrong side of history. And you can dismiss us as outside agitators, but I'd rather be called that than to be a corporate sellout. I have a policy degree, and I find myself instead wishing I got a theater degree to deal with this body. So we have an opportunity to use policy to drive a better outcome here. The Committee on Council approved a bait and switch ordinance, which was introduced 4 minutes ahead of the last council meeting. And no one had the time to read it. And when I engaged with some of you, you said, we can get this right. We can find a way to remove signature matching, and we could find a way to make sure this is in accordance with the law. And so we did that. And today, you must amend what was passed. You must amend it, remove signature matching immediately, and use the concept of cure, which, if you do not understand the concept of cure, it is an opportunity that if the line item has any sign of invalidity, then let us work together to figure out whether it's a valid signature or not. There are political processes around the country that have been codified to protect people's civil and human rights. And in a time like right now, protecting people's civil and human rights are vital because they are under attack. Here is the legislation you are voting on today. I'm calling on you to remove Section D, number 2, just in case you need a direct place, and you do not need a signature verification or matching process. If you choose otherwise, and if you refuse to protect democracy today, may democracy be the tool that is used on a referendum for your career. We are listening, we are watching, and we want to be on the right side of history together. I hope you'll do the right thing.
Thank you. Next will be Dewan Robinson.